Coming up, we have Greg Kevin, former police and fire. Great story about the corporate security world. Might not be totally for you. You might want to stick with law enforcement. Great story coming up.
Let me tell y'all out there a little story. Man, and it goes a little something like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and children of all ages, it is yours truly once again, the corporate security translator and the author of So You Want to Get Into Corporate Security. Today I got someone really, really special for y'all. Greg, good friend of mine. We had the opportunity of working together for a little company called Amazon, and he's just an incredible human being. And the cool thing about him is that he has like this two background deal with the fire department and police department, which I'm sure he's going to explain. So listen, without any further ado, let's everybody welcome Mr. Greg Kevin. The crowd goes.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you.
The crowd is going crazy right now.
Hold the applause, please.
Hold the applause. Man, look, what a pleasure. What a pleasure it is to see you. I'm pumped up, man. I'm pumped up just because of, one, who you are, and it's great for us to always connect and chat. And then, two, because of your incredible background, man, with the fire and police and all this other stuff, and then going right into a big corporation like an AWS, Amazon, and being able to make that transition, which is going to help our law enforcement, military, emergency services, and federal folks transition. So I'm just going to go get right to it. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, man? Let's get this party going.
Hey, Carlos, thanks for allowing me to talk.
Oh, you're the man.
Hey, my background, I started with a little agency. Well, it's not so little, but I worked for the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety and started there in about 1990. And for those of you who are not aware of what the public safety concept is it's a combined police and fire agency.
Right.
Their officers are hired. They're trained as police officers. They're trained as firefighters. They're trained as EMTs, and they rotate between divisions. Wow. So one year you'd work in police, the next year you'd work in fire. And what they do is the fire engines only have two firefighters on it, and the rest of the staffing comes from patrol officers. So if there's a fire, they will send a bunch of fire engines, but they'll also send a bunch of cop cars, and the cops will change out of their gun belts, put on their fire turnouts, and go fight the fire. What? I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
No, you're serious? Like they carry all their fire stuff in the back?
All the fire stuff's in the back. So
wow.
Because you think about it, when you have a fire, you only need the surge of manpower towards the beginning, and then you're supplemented later by off-duty response. But they don't send all the cops. They only send a portion, so there's still sufficient staffing to handle the bank robberies and other things like that.
Do the cop work. Yep.
But it's really a great system. I joke with people that when I was a kid, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be a cop or a firefighter, so I became both.
Yeah, I personally walked in the wrong door, man. I walked in the cop door. I should have gone to be a fireman, to be honest with you, man. I don't know.
So, we're talking about people making the transition, but for your military folks out there, for your EMTs and paramedics out there are great agencies out there, police agencies that are looking for quality individuals. And I know the city of Sunnyvale hires military. Right. We've hired many paramedics to help supplement what's going on. So aside from I hate to do this to you, Carlos, but aside from the corporate world, there is a lot of public agencies out there right now, particularly in these times, that are looking for quality individuals.
And that's that's a great point. That's a great point, man. Because though I tend to always stick with the corporate security stuff, it is true, and the reason for that is because there's a lot of folks, Greg, that contact me and want to have a conversation about getting into the corporate world, and then they forget that there is police departments out there that the military folks or anybody that can kind of go right into because the jobs just fit. So there is also that other angle, man. So actually, I appreciate you bringing that up because we don't talk about that enough, especially in today's world. We need some. I think there's kind of a shortage, right?
Yeah, absolutely right now. And to be honest, with everything that's been going on this last year,
Yeah.
aside from COVID and the civil unrest, a lot of people are reconsidering whether they want a career in law enforcement.
Right.
And so actually numbers are down. There are not as many people wanting to go into law enforcement right now.
Right.
So the opportunity is prime right now for a quality individual that's looking for a career change. Law enforcement may be the way.
Yeah.
And don't get down about the way policing is being viewed by the media and the public right now, because everything changes, everything evolves, and a year from now, things will be different and look much better.
Great point, man. Great point. And again, folks should think about those things, especially if you want to continue to give back to your community, to your country, and everything else. You just have that urge in you to do so. That's definitely a great opportunity to go in, jump in, and continue to help your country. So nice, man.
And not only that, most public agencies or law enforcement agencies have great benefits, great retirements.
Right.
Everybody's taking care of their families now. And so there's a lot of upside to looking at a public agency.
That is true, man. And man, I'm glad I started thinking about wheels started turning here as I'm talking to you, because we don't cover that enough. So you just gave me a good opportunity or some great ideas for the future that I've never really thought about because, like I said, I've always been focused in the corporate security world. But there is a shortage right now. There's plenty of police departments. They're amazing police departments, state agencies, cities, small. From the, I mean, I came from the sheriff's office, so from the counties and everything else that are probably looking for some amazing folks. And you're right, Greg. I think that that would be a great transition from the military or any of the other ones right into it. So, but
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's one of the things to consider when you're looking at making the move from where you're at, is to step back and look at all the opportunities. Just don't get tunnel vision. Oh, I want to go work for Google, or I want to go work for Amazon.
Right.
You gotta step back. You gotta look. You gotta do your homework. You gotta figure out if it's going to be a good fit for you. And maybe corporate security is not going to be a good fit for you, and maybe a public job would be better.
Yeah.
You have to take the time, do the self-examination, and figure out what you really want.
Absolutely. And it's funny. So in the book, I talk about culture. Really taking the background of everything you have, then you kind of translate that into the company you want to go to and do a thorough background check on the company itself, because a Amazon works totally different than a Facebook, and a Facebook works totally different than a Google. And though you might have worn a suit and tie your entire life, when you go to Facebook, you come out with your boat shoes and in T-shirt and shorts. I mean, it's not something that you're going to be comfortable in while you're working there. You may see things that you've never seen before coming from the military or law enforcement. Is that the kind of culture that you're looking for? The way that the business is approached and how the corporation works and creating relationships, will that transfer for you? So there's a lot of different things. Now, like I said, you had a chance of doing both, Greg, and tell the folks a little bit about kind of like what the transition was into the corporate world, and maybe I'll just let you roll, man, with some positives, negatives, and maybe the differences of what you thought law enforcement was compared to the corporate world, and what worked and didn't work for you.
To be honest, the first thing I did is I had worked for 28 years with the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety and left with a full retirement. And so money was not a huge driving force for me.
Right.
And so when I left, I took 6 months and did nothing. I was
Nice.
very fortunate that I was able to sit back and deal with some family issues. I had aging parents and remodel the home. So that first 6 months to a year, it was just kind of like recalibrating, resetting myself.
Right.
And then I kind of looked around to see what was going on. I knew at that time I didn't want to work full time. So I ended up getting 2 part-time jobs. I worked for a local high-end security company that contracted with companies like Apple and Google. So I got to go in as an outside contractor and work in these larger companies and see what's going on and see how that worked.
Yep.
Which was a great experience. But I also, I taught for a while. I taught at the college level and taught college courses, giving back some of my knowledge that I'd gained.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so was it because were you bored, or was it something that you're like, you know what, I gotta do something? My wife usually kicks me out of the house quite often and says, dude, you got to go do something. So I don't know. Were you bored or?
Yeah, absolutely. When you come from a high drive, high energy environment that I was working in, after a year, I was bored. I wanted something to do. Right. I had more to give. The story wasn't over yet. And so I was looking, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so it was kind of an interesting journey, being able to try out different places and different things to work with.
So you mentioned, which I send people that way often, which is the third-party security vendors, the contract guard forces that are out there in the world. And some folks will reach out to me and say, man, I can't get into the Googles. I can't get into the Apples. I can't get into all these things. And I said, well, have you tried the companies that actually do security for them? Have you tried reaching out to them? And you got a lot of big companies now. We know Universal just bought out G4S, but you have Securitas. You have a lot of other ones, a lot of other regional ones. What do you think of working for a third-party company and then going into the company itself? Was there a big jump in change? What were some of the thoughts that you had behind that?
There is a huge change or a huge difference between working the security side or the contract security side or the client side of the house.
Right.
And to be honest, working the client side of the house is much better, much greater autonomy, and much greater say in what happens. On the other side, if you're working as contract security, you're a partner with the client, but right. In the end, you go the way the client wants to go.
Yeah, usually you have to do anything and everything that's contractually, figured out, contractually based. So I can see the differences of all of that. And when you were working for the third party vendor, were you just doing security? Was it some people, did they do VIP kind of executive security? What were you doing?
I was working for a company here in California, and they actually have a nationwide presence now, SIS Security. Oh, yeah. And I was working as one of their former law enforcement officers, where I was able to carry a concealed weapon and worked everything from executive protection right. to working in the facilities that they had contracts with, to working retail security as an armed person.
Got it. So as you were going through that, you said, well, maybe it's time for me to start looking for a corporation that would like to take a guy like me. And so what was that process? Were you just start applying, or did you focus on just one company? Did you focus on just one location?
Well, it's, you talk about this in your book, but a lot of it is networking.
Oh yeah.
That you can't just drop an application and expect to be called the following day, because you're one of 10,000 people that's applying for a job.
Yeah.
And it's, once again, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And you need to network, and you need to have those people to advocate for you, to guide you. And that's what I learned, while I was working security. It was a learning process for me. I'll back it up a little bit. The people that I worked with in my law enforcement career that made the most successful transition to the corporate world began their transition 5 years before they left the department. Yes. They were looking at, I need to get certified. I need to get my CPP through ASIS.
That's right.
How can the department help me get this? Yep. How can I get this education in place? And while they're working in their current agency, whether it's military, whether it's law enforcement, or whether it's fire, you're working with the community. You're getting your contacts out there, so that when the time comes for you to leave, you've already got your tool bag packed and you're ready to go.
That's it.
I have friends that are now, directors of corporate security that used to work for me, that are out there, but they had done their homework long before.
Way ahead of time. And I talk about a 5, 3, and 1 year plan. And the 5 year plan, I talk about this dude, man, that just kind of knows that everybody else is retiring, doesn't do anything about it, doesn't talk to them, doesn't become their best friend, doesn't ask them questions on how they're doing through their transition, what is it that they're doing, who they're talking to, and all of a sudden, they retire and they're like, oh God, what am I going to do? Well, they should have had a best buddy that was retiring and learned from them and kept in contact with them, because guess who's going to hire them when they leave, right? Their buddy that left the 5, 3, 1 year ago. So this is perfect. This is exactly what I tell folks, man. It's funny that you did. So did you do that too? Did you, like 5 years prior, kind of start thinking about, okay, do I really want to retire, or do I want to go do something else?
To be honest, I did somewhat, but I really didn't want to work when I left.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to walk out the door and have that portion of my life behind me. But life goes on and things change.
All right.
Go ahead.
So you go from there. Then you go from the contract guard force with SIS, and then were you still working with them before you kind of moved into the corporate security world? Actually,
while I was with SIS was when the Amazon position surfaced, and I applied for that because I figured the hours I was working full-time hours. So let's go see what it looks like on the client side. Right. And I made the transition to Amazon.
Nice. And so how was that? You walk in on your first day, man. Tell me a little bit about the language, kind of the not the culture of the company itself, but some of the differences in between where you came from in law enforcement to what it is to work in corporate security.
I like to tell the story that when I retired in 2009, the job I was walking into at Amazon did not exist.
Right.
Things change and evolve at a rapid pace. Right. Data centers really were just kind of a blip on the horizon, but over a 5 year period, they exploded. And all of a sudden, here I was working a job that didn't exist 5 years ago. And, from that standpoint, it was exciting, a lot to learn. And everybody uses the analogy of drinking from a fire hose, which it's a huge change walking into that. And it was fun.
What was the biggest thing that comes to mind with you right now? Like you walk in the first day and they start telling you, about this is what you're going to do. This is what you're in charge of. Was there something? Now is a good opportunity to be a little vulnerable. There's something that you're like, holy crap, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to learn.
Yeah, it was a little bit different for me. It was like coming from a law enforcement background and life or death situations, literally life or death situations, walking into the corporate world where all of a sudden their definition of life and death is much different than your definition of life and death.
Right.
That their priorities automatically are much different. Excuse me, there's a car that's parked wrong in the parking lot. Okay, I'll get to that. No. That's the most important thing you need to do right now is get that car taken care of. Yes, sir. So priorities are a little bit different. I think that was, once you understand that, and assimilate into the culture,
right?
It's fine. But for me, that was the biggest difference for me, was that life and death wasn't necessarily life or death anymore.
Yeah, it's funny how the corporate world they'll take some things that to probably you and I we would have probably sat back and just go, really? You got to be kidding me, and just make it into this huge issue that literally may even bother you for like 2-3 days. I don't know about you, but there's sometimes my boss would say something to me, and I'm like, really? Is it really? Man, it would bother me for like 3 to 5 days. So that took me a while to just learn and get through the process. Right.
But the basic skills, it's still all about dealing with people.
Right.
That as much as we talk about physical security, it's still about dealing with people. Your biggest threat in the corporate environment is still an internal threat. It's not going to be the hordes coming over the hill. It's going to be the disgruntled employee inside that's going to cause you more problems, more headaches. And so it's all about your relationships, and it's all about understanding people.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about the corporate security world too, is that there's some folks out there, they'll literally double what I call 007 everything. They will make sure that the security is prepared, the physical security is prepared to take on 007. 007 is going to come on a black plane in the middle of the night, parachute down on top of your building, slowly climb down the side wall, break into grates and doors on the side, go through, intrusion detection systems, IR beam camera, radar and cameras and all the other things, and break into it, where it's really not that way. Your internal threat really is the big issue. So very good. So while you were there and you were kind of going through the process and learning these things, and obviously, again, creating relationships, because people is still a big part of the corporate security world. Was there anything that kind of that you can help out the folks that are transitioning today? Anything that you thought, man, I probably could have focused on this a little bit better. Maybe maybe they can start focusing on that as they are transitioning into a corporate security world.
It's some of the educational components. We talked about ASIS earlier,
right?
And things like the CPP.
Yeah.
But little things like that expand your knowledge base. They expand your credibility.
Yeah.
And they kind of give you that little extra leg up. It may help you get the job. It may help with promotions,
right.
But that educational component and belonging in professional organizations like that is important.
Yeah, and the amount of network you can get. I tell a lot of police officers and military folks to try to get into a group like that, like an ASIS, not only because you're going to get educated, but you're going to go to meetings and you're going to meet a lot of folks that are already in the corporate security world that are, that could possibly hire you in the future. Those are big things. And the CPP certifications, the PSP certifications, they're based on education. But, if you have one of those, you're kind of like one of the cool kids, I think,
And it can't go without saying that, you develop a reputation when you enter the security world.
Right.
And for every position that I was hired into, there's the official background and then there's the unofficial background.
That's right.
Because everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, you know Greg, you worked with him back in Sunnyvale. Is he a good guy or a bad guy?
Oh, yeah.
And that carries a lot of weight.
It's such a small industry, and it doesn't matter where you go. And today, a connection that may know this person is like a click away. With LinkedIn, you can literally go, oh, you worked with this guy. Let me just hit him up real quick and say, hey, imagine, work with Larry, Moe, Curly. Oh, yeah, I did, man. How was Larry, Moe, and Curly? Well, they were all great, or they were not. So you got to keep that. You got to be honest, have integrity, and build your kind of background, like you were saying, the proper way, so people can speak highly of you and stuff like that. So,
and you bring up a very interesting point about, groups like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Just because you follow somebody or just because somebody's a friend on LinkedIn doesn't mean they're a reliable reference. That you can use them as a reference. You need to cultivate and develop those relationships more than just clicking a thumbs up or, responding, congratulations on your promotion.
Absolutely. That is key. You know what I just had, Greg? I literally had a couple of people just last week. Hey, Carlos, can I borrow a little bit of your time, 10, 15 minutes? I wanted to run an idea by you or just talk to you about my resume. Would you be able to take a look at it? Hey, I want to talk to you about corporate security and what are some of the main points of what you think I should be thinking about. Those people that, we generally want to help. People that are in our field want to help. We care, and that's the reason why folks like yourself got into law enforcement and stuff like that, because you want to help. That is part of what we do. And but you have to start creating those relationships. I tell people, hey, go buy somebody a coffee. I don't know if COVID-19 helps today, but go ask somebody if you could buy them a coffee and pick their brain, and buy them a lunch, buy them a dinner, buy them a beer. A lot of us like to talk. Like, look at me, I love to talk, but we like to share our knowledge as well. So that's a good point, man. I love it. I'm writing that down, Greg. I like it. So very good. So So you got into the corporate world and then kind of, then you left and you're like, well, I think I'm ready to retire again. What was some of the main points that you said, hey, I'm good. I got a sense of what it is. I think I'm going to retire. Was there something that to either caution folks because the first point that you brought up, you might want to go to law enforcement or stick with law enforcement for the next 5 years because the corporate world is this way and it might be a little bit different. So what was it about it when you said, hey, man, I gotta roll out of here. I think I'm good. I'm going to retire. And just to give some folks a heads up.
It was, we all evolve, we all change.
Yeah.
And something you have to consider when you're making the jump from law enforcement or the military is that you're going to go to a new organization and you're going to have to start over. You have to develop a new reputation.
Right.
You're most likely starting down towards the bottom and you have to work your way back up.
That's right.
And that's not bad. It's just a fact of life. And having said that, at times, I hate to let the secret out of the bag, but working for local government or a federal agency, you have a lot of discretion, you have a lot of leeway,
right?
And you're able to set your schedule. But when you go into the corporate world, you're working for somebody, and their bottom line is financially driven.
That's right.
Not safety driven, but financially driven, and they demand and they expect a lot. And I hate to say these words, but they expect you to work, and you will work.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they hire you from 9 to 5. They really want to see you there at 9 to 5, and it is what it is. And like you said, it's very financially driven. So, you got to stick to the plan. You got to stick to what they ask you to do. And one of the toughest things that you have to remember that you're restarting your career again, and it's difficult for some people that's been they were at the top. They're at the top of their game. They did 25 years. They're at the top of their game, and now they have to restart again. From the bottom, and that can be difficult for some folks,
But for me, looking forward, I was always looking for a way to grow in my personal growth.
Yeah.
And in my last position, I wasn't gonna be advanced. I wasn't gonna grow anymore. So it was personally, I was able to take and milk everything I could out of the position, and It was time to move on to something else.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to leave then with one more thing. I just need one more thing from you for the folks out there. And if you had to give those folks that are leaving the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and the federal jobs and trying to get into the corporate security world, if you had to give them one thing, man, to leave them with, what would it be?
Actually, I'm going to cheat and give you two.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
The first thing is carefully consider what you're doing, because oftentimes the grass is not always greener on the other side. Know what you have, understand it, cherish it. But if it's time to make the move, by all means make the move, but do your homework, prepare. You just can't say, okay, today's my last day. Tomorrow I'm going to put in an application. The day after I'm going to get a job.
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. I mean, there are some great agencies like, New York PD or the FBI that have built-in networks that, the day you retire, the next day you're starting a corporate security job because once again, that's their network and that's the way it works. But in reality, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some time.
That's funny, man. We used to joke that NYPD, when you leave the HR building, after you kind of give back your ID and you get your last paycheck or whatever, they literally give you a sheet of paper and says, "Hey, Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida is hiring." And because we used to get so many of the NYPD folks, and we loved every single one of them. But you're right, Greg. Well, listen. Thank you, man. Thank you very much for giving us a little bit of your time. It's always a pleasure to see you, talk to you, and thank you for giving the folks all your knowledge. And I really appreciate you kind of bringing back that the corporate world might not be for everybody, and there's a lot of law enforcement folks, especially if you're coming out of the military, a lot of law enforcement entities out there that are looking for amazing folks. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. And, I hope to see you again,
Hey, thank you, Carlos. I appreciate the opportunity, and Happy New Year to you and everybody out there.
Happy New Year. So, everybody, once again, that was Greg Kevin hanging out with us today, sharing all his knowledge and all the good things. So, from me, the corporate security translator, the author of So You Want to Get Into Corporate Security, I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.